Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. And I am your host, Wisdom Moon, and also your friend in the Christian music industry. And I have a friend from the music industry, Todd McVicker. Welcome, Todd.
Hey man, how's it going?
Great. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, his voice and his name might sound familiar because back in the day we used to do Instagram lives, and Todd was a guest. And I
That's
think
right.
during
Yeah,
COVID, maybe it
I
was.
think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're here to catch up with Todd. And if you've never heard of him, hopefully you'll be introduced to him and you'll be inclined to check out his stuff. So, there's a amazing bio written about Todd that you can find probably on his website. But really, all you need to know is Todd has an amazing story and does amazing things, and God's using him to do awesome things.
I
So,
love that.
um, yeah, and yeah, I've got to spend quite a bit of time with Todd over I guess, a couple of years now.
Mhm.
Some in person, a lot of it virtually or over the phone. So Todd's one of my favorite people. Just not artist, but I think Todd is just an awesome dude. So
Thanks,
I'm
man.
just excited to have him on the podcast. And he is the creative arts pastor. Is that
Yep.
right?
I tell
At the
everyone it's a made up title.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
And he serves at the largest multicultural church in the country in the U.S. And he's served as a worship leader, songwriter. He's an artist with Lula Street Records. So we're really
hmm
excited to be working with him. And we actually met, I guess, through a mutual friend, producer, and you hired us to do marketing for your first
Yeah.
project. And then we ended up partnering together on the label side of things. So that's been really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit about anything that maybe I didn't cover that you would love for people to know.
Oh wow. Um, you did a great job, man. I think I love all things creative. I believe
Mm,
that God is the ultimate creator, and He created us to be creative. So I feel so close to Him when I'm able to create whatever. I mean,
mm.
it could be music or scripts or visual things. I mean, I love it so much. I get such a thrill being able to do that.
Okay,
I, I
so
think
we're
so.
gonna go a little bit deeper with this. I
Okay.
love that you brought that up. And I mean, your job title has the word creative in it, and it
Yeah.
sounds like maybe you like demanded that in your job title. You're like, I need to have the word creative in my job title. uh, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are about people listening that may not be artists,
Mhm.
songwriters. Maybe they don't consider themselves creatives, and maybe they're a stay-at-home mom, or they
Yeah.
just work like a 9 to 5 at a corporate job. How do you see creativity in that? Like, do you feel like all of us are created to be creative, and how?
I really, really do. I think that for the most part, people that are labeled creatives definitely are in some sort of art form, and I think
Mm,
that that's absolutely valuable. That
yeah.
creatives can be in some sort of art, but I think everyone was designed to be creative. I mean, it's he is the creator. So
Hmm.
if that is who he is, and he created us in his image, I think that we all are. So I would say, like, to a stay-at-home mom, be creative on how you care for your home and how
Hmm.
you take care of your kids, or how you decorate the house that you live in. To the accountant, be creative in how you talk with clients, or how you market yourself, or how you um, put spreadsheets together. I don't know what accountants do. You don't want me in that job. But yeah, I think that everything that we do, we can be creative in it, and it's not
Mm,
just regulated to the arts. It's just
yeah.
easier. It's just easier to see, I think, with art is, artists take generally something from nothing and go, here's something that we created. And so it's
Hmm.
easy to go, okay, that person's creative because they actually created something. But
Right.
craftsmen are very, very creative. Someone that can take, a piece of wood or a piece of stone and make something out of that is just that's amazing. Even if it's like a
Mm.
cabinet, that's still they created that. That's
Yeah.
stuff like that is amazing.
Yeah. And all of us, or I would say most of us, have a voice, right? Like, sometimes, like when we think about creativity, we're thinking like, what's something that we can like tangibly see or
Hmm.
hear, like on Spotify. But there's this whole side of like, the power of the tongue. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, we hold the power of like life and death, in our
yeah.
tongues. And I think oftentimes it's easy to forget how powerful just our words are, and
Hmm.
how we can like speak words of life into somebody. And I think, that's something that I love about songwriting is
Hmm.
just like the craft of songwriting, and how like you can spend hours, days, weeks on one song or even one line, to go, okay, this is
Yes.
not perfect.
Yeah,
And I mean, it is creativity, and all of us who have a voice or who have, the ability to write, like we can all be creative in that way too, even
absolutely.
in how we pour into our own kids. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love what you shared about that.
Well, even if you go to the very, basis of Christianity, I mean, Jesus said, to go into all the world and make disciples. To make someone a disciple is creating
Mm,
a Christ follower, someone that
wow.
follows him. So, I mean, that's just the bare bones of it is we're all called to at least create that. And I would
Yeah.
argue that that's a very important creation that we're charged to do from Jesus's mouth. So, yeah, man, create a
Yeah.
way in whatever capacity you can. Yeah, absolutely.
So in your role at your church, I know like recently you've been really more laser focused on the creative arts side. So
Mhm.
what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, like the big ticket items I'm responsible for are Easter. I mean, that's church Super
Mm.
Bowl. Christmas is increasingly becoming that. So those are our two kind of main focal points of my job.
Did you
And
say it's Easter is the church Super Bowl?
oh yeah,
I love
that's the Super
that.
Bowl. That's it. That's what we gear up for every year. That's when all the people come back. You got them
That's
for like an
amazing.
hour. You got to, we're sharing everything we can with them so that they see
Yeah.
how awesome Jesus is. Yeah, absolutely. And Christmas is becoming that too. Like a lot of families are
Mm.
coming back, and so we do very kind of theatrical presentations. That's something that years and years and years ago, before there was even an idea of a job title like this for me, I was doing worship here at the church, and I grew up very experimental in art and things like
Mm.
that. I went to performing arts high school, so I can remember being a small kid and like coming up with music video ideas from artists that I really like. Like I could just see it. And at some point, you go back in church history and the Renaissance happens, right? Where
Mm.
all this beauty and art and music and painting come out of the church to the world. Like that was the epicenter of everything that was created was coming primarily out of the church. And then at some
Mm.
point, the church lost that, and it came out of the church, and the world took up the mantle of being the supreme creators. And for a long period of time, the stuff that the church did try to create was not very good. It was it
Yeah.
was at least subpar, for the most
Mm.
part. And I think that we've come kind of full circle on that. And so I had this sort of dream years ago to bring the art back into the church and to
Mm.
produce some things that we could be really proud of, things that really honored God. So we started really, really small. We started with like some narration things on
Oh.
on Easter. So instead of just the pastor come out and delivering a message and maybe have a special song, there was a narration piece that told a bit of a story that was
Mm.
connected to a song. So we started with that, and it just grew and grew. So now I mean, very short of doing full fledged like productions of, more like a musical or play or something like that. Very multimedia,
Mm.
video, and all those things. So that takes up a lot of time because it's you're planning 6 months for one weekend, and
Yeah.
then Christmas is right after that. So like I just had a meeting today to go over sort of what we landed on for a potential Christmas
Oh,
service
wow.
this year. And then I'm helping come up with some creative ideas for a youth conference that we're doing in the fall.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's things like that. So those are the two
Yeah.
big items, and then any other sort of conferences or video ideas, or anything that someone wants to just sit down and chat about. Sometimes I'm the primary executor of that, and sometimes I just give ideas. So it just kind of depends. But I get to do a lot of just coming up, dreaming, coming up with cool ideas, and seeing what we can do, what we can't do, things like that. So
Man.
it's like the best job I've ever had for sure.
Yeah. Some people listening are like, wow, that's my dream job you just described.
And it was something that was, like I said, it wasn't planned. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. And that's why the job title's made up. Like we didn't even know, what to what to call it. We went through a lot of bad ideas. But yeah, it's really, really amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. My official job title at my church, where I serve part time, is worship and creative arts director. But we don't really do a lot of the things that you mentioned, like theatrical things, all
Yeah.
that. So we're still working on the creative arts side, like what that looks like.
Man,
So
we
now I
should
have some
talk, man.
ideas.
We should
Yeah.
talk. Our really heartbeat is to be able to help other churches find
Mm.
their creative voice and how to tell stories.
Oh, awesome.
Because man, you look at Jesus's ministry, and he told stories,
Yeah.
and he did it in a narration standpoint. But man, we can do it in multimedia and really make
Mm.
these things come alive for people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and I don't think that you have to be a mega church to do that. I think that you can, wherever you're at with resources, I think that there's a way that you can tell the gospel story in a creative way that's
Yeah.
compelling for people. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very true. So you a couple of years ago decided, hey, I'm gonna write some songs and put them out there,
Yeah.
and not just that, because I mean that's easier now than ever to do that. Just like record
Yeah.
something, put it out there. But you decided I'm gonna do this right and do it well. So what prompted you to record your first project? And like, I mean, it's a pretty big investment, like
Yeah.
financially, time wise,
Yeah.
So yeah, what prompted you to actually do that?
Yeah, I credit the guy that you mentioned early on. His name is Sean Hill. He is just an amazing human,
Mm,
brother, creative partner, producer, like all the things. And so, yeah, we had been, he had started coming to the church, I guess 6, 7 years ago or something.
mm,
And we met sort of by accident. I had done a missions trip with a bunch of our young worship people. We used to
mm,
go every year to Belize and do like a worship trip, go to do youth camps and things like that. And one of the nights at this YWAM camp in Belize, open air, like really,
mm,
really hot. One of our young worship leaders kind of came up with this spontaneous chorus idea,
mm,
and it was very like flowy environment, at the end of worship, at the end of the service.
yeah.
And she kept singing this kind of line over and over again, and it was like in that moment, I felt like God was kind of uh, gently nudging to write music again. And I had
Mm,
written music, as a younger man, and got into this idea like I'm not good at it. That's not my
mm,
gifting. Whatever the
yeah,
criticism, your own criticism is so loud sometimes. So I
yeah,
kind of laid it down, and people would ask if I wrote songs. Oh, I'm not a songwriter.
mm,
So anyway, that happened at that mission trip, and so I came back and with a kind of core group of people wanted to kind of write a song based on this chorus that she came up with. And a friend of mine said, I got a guy that lives near the church that actually has a home studio, and he said we could come use the space. So we
mm.
went over there, and I didn't even think he would be around. I thought we could just use like his basement, and that was Sean. And he ended up writing the song with us, helping
Wow.
us create a demo. We did it at church like a couple of weeks later, and it started
Mm,
this whole process of really spending a lot of time with him. He's a phenomenal songwriter, and so
mm,
sort of learning from him in the process of trying to bring original music back to our church. So
mm,
I mean, this was years and years and years. We would write pretty regularly, bring in other people from the church, some not at the church, and just write. And the primary goal was to write for the church. So it was very, corporate centered worship music.
yeah.
And then we would write it, demo it, and do it on the weekend, see what worked, see what didn't. And in that process, I realized, actually, I think Sean pointed this out to me. I always wanted to take the song in a much more artistic direction than
Yeah.
you would typically be able to do on a in a Sunday morning environment. Not that you
Mm,
can't be creative on Sunday, but it's just, you want people to be able to catch what you're saying, the melody.
yeah.
You want the musicians to be able to play the music, all those things. But I kept wanting to take it in this other direction, and we would always have to go, okay, well, that's cool, but if we want it to be for the people, there's some other things that we have to do with the
Mm,
music. So, I mean, this would happen almost every time we wrote. And so at some point, that dream of kind of writing music um, outside of the church kind of was birthed again, and we just
mm,
talked. And he's like, "Those ideas that you have, why don't you just take those and let that be an expression of who you are, so we're not having to force it back into a corporate environment."
yeah.
And I was terrified, man. I mean, I had done stuff with the church before. I had tried a couple of like Christian worship band kind of things.
Mm,
I was terrified to be solo. I never liked that. I think it was just insecurity of who I was as a performer, as a
mm,
vocalist, whatever. Um, but I really, really kind of felt like God was nudging me in that direction.
mm.
And thankfully, my wife was super on board, which is like I couldn't have done it if she didn't want me to do it. We wouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
She was super supportive. Everyone around me was really, really
Mm,
supportive. And so at the beginning of the process, I sat down with Sean and said, okay, if we're going to do this, like I really want to do it right. And
mm,
so that's when he mentioned you, which was just such a God connect because that really changed the game. I don't know that
mm,
anyone would have ever heard these songs had we not met.
mm.
Because the concept of like marketing and that was just completely foreign to me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, me and you chatted and loved your heart and what you were trying to do with artists. So that was a immediate yes for me. And then
Mm,
it was just about resourcing it. I know people do the Kickstarter and things like that. That's just not my personality. So
mm,
it's something that we had to save for and really put a lot of resource behind. But I'm so glad I did. And now it's sort of become a rhythm, especially working with Lula Street now, that we write and demo and produce the song and market it and release it, and it's so much fun. It's so
mm,
rewarding, and I really love it.
mm. Wow. Man, it's just like really inspiring to hear your story of just, writing for your church and then kind of like accidentally discovering that you had this other part in you.
Yeah,
Maybe that wasn't like the best fit for a Sunday morning.
yeah,
And then being able to like, explore that with the right people on your
hmm,
side and like cheering you on and believing in you. I think, it for a lot of us that thought can feel intimidating of like, well, I don't know, like if people are gonna care about what I
oh,
have to
for sure.
offer.
Well, especially
So
in trying to start a music career, at 40 years old is, not a normal, not a normal path, generally for this kind of thing.
yeah.
So that was a part of it too.
Okay, so actually, I was interviewed on a podcast today, earlier today, and by Sam Hart, who actually I had on our podcast here recently.
Oh, cool.
And Sam basically asked, because he's been asked by other artists, basically like at some point, like, are you too old to do music? Because obviously, like in the music industry and even Christian music industry, there seems to be this like certain age range that labels are looking for, and you kind of like age out of that.
Hmm.
So, what's your take on that?
Well, I don't think it's just in the music industry. If you look at
Mm.
a lot of churches, it's the same
Oh yeah,
way.
yeah.
That's something that we struggle with for sure is how do you make sure that people are represented? And there's a large population of older people that
Mm.
don't get to see themselves. So that reinforces that sort of idea that you can age out. I don't think
Mm.
you can age out. I think that, you know, I think you with what is tasteful now
Mm,
with anything, with any kind of pop culture thing, music, art, film, photography, design. You definitely have to stay connected to what trends and stuff are. Not that you're
mhm,
chasing the trend, but you have to be somewhat connected to it in order to be viable, maybe
mm,
commercially. And that's something that thankfully I have a lot of younger people around me that I don't think that I know it all, so I'll go to
mm.
them and go, "Hey, is this is this cool? Is this not cool? What do it's sort of a market research thing."
Mhm,
And that saved me a couple of times where I thought
mm.
something was really cool, and they go, "Yeah, that was cool like 5 years ago." I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I should do something different then."
Yeah.
But I think if you're connected enough with younger people, I think that can definitely help.
Mm,
Um, but I don't think all of a sudden you get to a certain age and you don't have anything to say anymore. If anything, had I done this when I was 20 something, I would have made a lot of mistakes because I was
yeah.
so prideful on
Mm,
what I thought was good and wasn't good and very critical of other people's expression and things like that, that I'm not like that anymore. So it's very, very easy now to look at something that maybe I don't prefer and see value in it when,
mm,
15 years ago I would have just like dogged it, which is not
yeah.
helpful in music or the kingdom. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, so I say, if someone's older and they still have a passion and desire to do it, go for it. Um,
yeah.
hire wisdom to help you market it so that people hear it. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege of working with, people in 60 plus age range.
That's awesome.
And yeah, the interview I did this morning, I was sharing with Sam that it's really like a Western culture mentality because in so many other cultures, including like Korean culture, which I'm the most familiar with outside of like American culture,
Hmm.
you really have so much respect for the elders, like anybody that has a lot more life experience than you,
Yeah.
and you realize that they can still add value, to society, and they do have like so much more experience,
Yep.
because you can't really there's no like substitute for experience. You could read all the
No.
books but it doesn't
No. Yeah.
substitute for it. So yeah, I think there's just like a different perspective, I think, in our culture and how we look at age and
Yeah.
how like yeah, you can pretty much like age out of entertainment industry. And I think it's kind of sad because then you miss out on what the older people can bring and like what they have to offer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually
Absolutely.
had coffee just the other day with a CEO, or like a former CEO, I guess, that's in his 60s. And I mean, I just love talking to people like that
Yeah.
because they have so much experience that they can share, and you get to like glean from them and their mistakes so you don't have to make the same
Yeah.
mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so good.
So I would love to hear from you as far as like your songwriting approach. How do you mentioned writing with other people, and it's probably easier, maybe like in your case, than somebody that's in a very like rural small church context. Maybe they don't have anybody in their church that writes, or maybe that writes like well.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about with your songwriting approach, and how do you like find the people to collaborate with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know people that are just singularly gifted at songwriting that can just sit down at a piano
Mm,
or guitar, and
yeah.
they don't need help. They can just
Mm,
do it. I'm not I'm not that person. I thrive with a group of people
mm,
because it's different perspectives and ideas and preferences and all those things. Um, Generally, if I'm with the group, first of all, I've tried a lot of different like collaborative processes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think the first thing is just being okay that if something doesn't work, if you're not connecting with that group of people, that's okay. That doesn't mean
mm,
anyone was bad or not good or wrong, or it's just maybe
yeah.
not your people. But when you find your people, you know it instantly. So I go back time
Mm,
and time again to a couple of different people that I love to write with, because
Mm.
not only do we walk away with something that I think is really great, but the process is so life giving. Like we're talking about really interesting, deep things of
Mm.
theology, and if we say it this way, how will people interpret it? And
Yeah.
um, differing points of views on melodies and vibe of the song. I mean, it's just I
Mm.
walk away just like flying just
Mm.
from the process, even though it's hard work sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so finding your people, I think it's just a huge thing, and I'm so blessed that I found that pretty early on in this process.
Mm.
So I think, like, as far as process goes, we generally start with just sort of an idea of what we want to say. Sometimes that is vibe of the song. I can hear vibe very, very easily. I feel like the
Mm.
song should be, slow and moody, or no, this has got to drive a little bit. Like I can kind of generally go into a session with that sort of idea.
Yeah.
And then we might start with a phrase. We might start with a story. We could start with a melody. Sometimes we've done that. So it just really depends on what the focus. I love this is different too. I love having a focus on what
Mm.
we're doing as well. That really helps me out a lot. It narrows, and a lot of creative people don't like the constraint of narrowing the idea, but I
Yeah.
found that it really really helps me. If I know we're going in and writing this very emotional song about a testimony, like I
Mm.
can kind of zero in on phrases or stories from the Bible, things like that. But when you go in with, well, what do we want to write about? That is overwhelming to me. I can't,
Mm.
that's very hard for me to
Yeah.
do. Um, and the other thing I learned in that process from Sean is walk away with a demo. It doesn't have to
Mm.
be a demo that's ready to be sent out, but walk away with something recorded. That's the easiest way to move that project forward, because you
Mm.
actually have something tangible that you
Yeah.
can listen to and go, um, this melody part is weird, or that word,
Mm.
I don't even understand what that means.
Mm.
You can tweak it with something that's already almost fully formed. Is a lot
Mm.
easier than walking away with just an idea, because
Yeah.
it's not tangible. So I think that's primarily the process. Also for me, I can't write from like spontaneity or
Mm.
waiting for a creative feeling. I have to schedule it, and so
Mm.
I have something on my calendar for I think a week from today for a write,
Mm.
and that's the easiest way for me to keep honing that gift. But also, I know that's coming, so I set aside time specifically
Yeah.
for writing.
That's good.
And the other thing, I think most people probably as writers do this, but always have voice memos. Like if a melody or a lyric idea hits me, I'll record it or write it down in notes, so I can go back and reference that later if it matches,
Yeah.
whatever the focus is of that write.
Mm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's some really good practical things too.
Yeah,
That's really helpful. And while we're talking about songwriting, I would love to invite you guys to come to our worship songwriters retreat that Lula Street Records is hosting in Kansas City, September 12th through the 14th. And I'm trying to convince Todd to come. So he said he'll only come if you guys, the listeners, come to it.
yeah,
I
we
just
got to
made
have the people. I was just looking at flights and hotels yesterday, so
Oh, nice.
I'm 99.5% sure I'm going to be there.
Oh, all right, guys. You gotta convince Todd. Send him a DM on Instagram.
Yeah, send me a thumbs up DM.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, one thing I'd love for you to share too is your passion for missions.
Yeah. I I think everyone that is a believer in Jesus should be on some sort of mission trip pretty
Mm,
regularly. Now, you don't have to travel all around the world. I think you should. I think you learn a lot from
mm,
visiting other cultures. There's so much of the world that we can learn from just sitting with how different cultures think and interact with each other, and what's valuable to them and how they see the Bible. It's eye opening in so many ways.
yeah.
But there's missions most cities have, inner city missions. Most churches have some sort of, missional bent. So I, it's literally changed my life. I've been kind of all over, but there's two that I've sort of landed on over the past 10 years. Like I said before, I usually do a worship mission trip to Belize. We haven't been able to go back since COVID. I'm hoping to go back maybe next year.
Mm.
But that one's specifically for worship people, and we do camps kind of all over the country. I have some really great connections there.
Oh, cool.
I've seen God do some just amazing things
Mm.
in my life and our team's life and the people's life. That's been really great. And then over the past 5 or 6 years, I do a trip to Philippines.
Mm.
Philippines is one of the top 5 destinations in the world for sex tourism, which is
Mm.
just horrendous. That's
Yeah.
even a phrase. And we work with an organization called Wipe Every Tear that help rescue girls out of sex trafficking, and
Mm.
they provide housing, food, and pay for them to go to college, which breaks the poverty cycle.
Mm.
And that one is there's a all I can say is there's a high that you get with the Lord when you go on a trip like that. You have to be
Mm.
so connected to the Holy Spirit that it's just it just brings life out of you. It's
Oh,
so great. So
yeah.
that one's kind of heavy. So you don't
Mm.
necessarily have to do that, but do something. Get out
Yeah.
and connect with people. It's really 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 valuable.
Yeah. I'm a part of our church in downtown Kansas City, and our youth during COVID, basically, like before COVID, they were doing missions, in other parts of the world. And then during COVID, they ended up focusing on the city. So now it's an annual thing
That's so
called
good.
For My City. And it's like
Yeah,
downtown and the urban areas, and going
yeah,
to like
man.
homeless shelters and stuff like that. And so our kids are part of it. So that's really cool to
That's so
even just
great.
see our church do missions like within our own community. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
so
you
great,
don't
man.
yeah, you don't have to fly,
Mm,
around the globe, which I mean, I think there is some, incredible things that happen too, like especially to yourself. Like
mhm,
God does a work in you when you go to these places where there's
mhm,
so much brokenness
mhm.
and, darkness and
And a big part too is that time is so focused. You're intentionally in the word, you're intentionally talking about the Lord to other people, you're intentionally praying and worshiping, you're intentionally not in your routine, generally not on like your phone or so hopefully
yeah,
not on social media a lot. There's
yeah.
this intentionality about whatever time period that
Mm,
is just is so life-giving. It really
yeah.
does. I live for those moments.
Mm, wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really good challenge for all of us to not be, just like so consumed with our own world, but
Mhm.
like look beyond that to what God's doing in other parts of your city, other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe before I let you go, if you could share a little bit about what's coming up in Todd McVicker's life, what are you
Yeah.
excited about?
Yeah, a lot of stuff is coming up. I am about to release my last song of my live tapes EP. That was all the songs from the original EP that I did a few years ago, I guess now. Wow, that's crazy. It's been a few years. And we kind of reimagined them, did them in a sort of a live context, stripped back a bit at times. I
Mm,
think they're really cool. So the last one, Love Comes In, comes out in 2 weeks, I believe.
awesome.
And then I'm working on a brand new single for the summer. Song is crazy. It's really really fun. It's called Dynamite. So that's being mastered as we speak. So I should have that very very soon.
Nice.
And then I think I'm gonna work on some Christmas stuff this year. So that'll be
Oh,
something new for me. And then we'll see what 2023 looks like. That's crazy, right?
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's a lot of really fun stuff.
I just have to see you in a Santa hat, whether it's on the cover of the
That would be
Christmas
awesome.
music or
That'd
just
be awesome.
on Instagram. I just can picture it. I think it
Let's
would
do
be
it,
great.
man.
So
Let's do it. Maybe gray out the beard. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast and sharing about your journey. If you like to connect with Todd, I would say probably Instagram is the
Yeah.
most active
That's the one I'm on
place.
most for sure.
Yeah, T McVicker, and then also you can probably just Google his name and find his website and the other things. Also, find him on TikTok. He does a lot of TikTok dances.
What's the point? The point
Totally
being,
kidding.
right.
Yeah.
My wife loves TikTok. I don't get it, man. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I will say when I first looked at TikTok, I was like, I don't get this. This is dumb, And then the more time I spent on it, the less of the dumb stuff I saw, because the algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was like, this is all just like dances. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not really like wanting to see all this. And then, yeah, the more I engage with the other types of content, it slowly I mean, it was actually pretty quick. It started to really learn what I liked to engage with and like watch.
So
Because,
that's sort of the separator with TikTok, right? Is it kind of,
yeah,
yeah, that's so
it
interesting to me.
really, yeah, I feel like that platform does the best job at that. Over all the other platforms, like really catering to like what you like to see. And then, now I'm like watching iPhone hacks and all
Oh, that's
this
cool.
stuff.
I didn't even know that was on there. See?
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of like just I think this morning I saw somebody talking about like tax stuff, the just like
Wow.
yeah, all these like,
Wow.
attorneys and accountants and stuff like they found ways to make these like really boring concepts entertaining where you can actually like learn some things, and be entertained at the same time.
So
So
full circle moment, you're saying accountants can be creative
yes. Yes.
using TikTok.
Yes.
Look at that.
Todd, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you and just how you continue to pour into others and continue to, stay creative.
Thanks, Wisdom. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to catch up too.
Yeah.
See you in September.